Welcome, everyone. Today is Monday, January 22nd, 2024, and this is a regular meeting of the City of Asbury Park Planning Board, as well as the yearly reorganization. Chairwoman Kurzak, will you please call the meeting to order?
Yes, this meeting is being held in compliance with the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975. Adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to the Coaster and Asbury Park Press by publication of the annual meeting notice and posted on the municipal bulletin board and municipal website. All notices are on file with the board secretary. Official action may be taken at the following matters before the board. Fire exits are located on east and west sides of the council chambers, as well as the back of the building. I will ask everyone with a cell phone or other device to kindly silence your device for the duration of this meeting. This meeting is being recorded by APTV. Please join me for a Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will now take roll call. James Bonanno. Councilwoman Clayton.
Yes, here.
Eric Gallipo.
Here.
Jim Henry.
Here.
Mayor John Moore is absent. Daniel Shenameo is absent. Jennifer Souter. Here. Pedro Travella is absent. Vice Chair Mike Goonan. Here. And Chairwoman Barbara Kurzak.
Here. Okay, we're going to go into the reorganization part of the meeting, and you know this is always a little bit of a rocky road, so bear with me, because we do it once a year. All right, can I get a nomination for a temporary chairperson?
I nominate Barbara Kurzak.
Second.
All right, temporary board attorney, I nominate Jack.
Second.
Temporary board secretary, Marie.
Second.
Okay, now we can continue.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it. Go.
Okay, now we can continue on. Just so that you're aware that there was a appointment and / reappointment of planning board members this afternoon by Mayor John Moore, Councilwoman Yvonne Clayton, James Bonanno. Michael Goonan has been moved from alternate 1 to class 4 member. Pedro was brought in as alternate 2 officially. So what that really essentially means is that if we vote on anything today, these people are all eligible to vote because it'll happen today.
Question, Barbara.
Yes.
With Pedro, he's listed here as alternate 2.
Yes.
If Michael moved up and there's no alternate 1, doesn't he automatically move to alternate 1?
It wouldn't be a bad idea, but there's more to the story.
Okay.
Let's just say that.
Okay.
We'll let you know a little further down the line on that. Okay, here we go. Let's go for the annual board reorganization, the nominations and appointment for 2024 offices. Can I get a nomination for chairperson?
Nominate Barbara.
Second.
How did you,
You can do it by voice. if you like.
okay, do you want to go one by one then?
Yes.
Every single one?
You can do it, that's why we do it by voice. It'll be rather quick.
Okay, one second. Okay, James Bonanno?
Yes. You don't
Council-
have to do that.
No.
Just do all in favor.
Oh, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Ayes have it.
All right,
That works.
nomination for vice chairperson. I nominate Michael Goonan.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
Nomination for board secretary, Marie Rodriguez.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Nomination for board attorney, Jack Serpico.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? None?
Thank you.
Nomination for conflict attorney, the Beekman brothers.
Second.
Second.
So Barbara and then Jim.
No, actually, they're not brothers.
No,
They're not, that's
They're not brothers. They're cousins. I'm sorry. My fault.
The Beekman family.
The Beekman family.
all in favor for the Beacon family?
Aye.
None opposed?
No.
Okay.
All right, nomination for board planner, CCH.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Next.
Nomination for conflict board planner, TNM.
Second.
Barbara, you nominated?
Yes.
I am nominated.
Okay.
Seconded by Yvonne.
All in favor?
Aye.
None opposed? Board engineer.
Board nomination for board engineer, I nominate Insight in the interim. At this point, they have requested to leave the city. And so right now, we're going to go with them for interim, and they're going to stay until, well, the RFP actually has already gone out for other firms to come in. We will interview them as we normally do and see who will take their place.
Did we have a conflict engineer last year?
We do, TNM.
Tina.
So we have an Insight had said that they were going to stay until, we finish up and until we get someone in here. So I nominate Insight as an interim board engineer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I nominate TNM as conflict board engineer.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And for board
Opposed?
Any opposed?
No. Okay, good.
And for board recording services, we have APTV. I nominate.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And any opposed?
Okay, great. All right, our favorite part, the committees. All right, we have 3 committees. The Design Review Committee. Does anybody would like to, in the past, we've had Eric, Michael, and myself. Anyone would like to volunteer to be on the Design Review Committee? We've had, I don't know if we had any this year. We might have
we
had
did.
one meeting.
We had 2 or 3.
Just a couple for design review? All right, any volunteers?
You mean other than the existing? I will volunteer.
All right, Eric,
I will volunteer again.
Eric's in, Michael's in, anyone else?
Is Barbara in?
If we're missing anyone, then I will be in.
Barbara was the alternate last year.
I was the alternate last year, I can be in if we want to, if nobody wants to. So I'd like to give other people opportunities, if they choose not to grasp at those opportunities, I will step in. Okay, I'm in.
Rick was the third and then you were the alternate.
Yes, yes. Okay. Bylaw Policy Committee, my favorite. Yvonne, how about it?
Oh, yes.
Yvonne's in. Okay, we need, we had James and Jim in it last year. Any other, anybody else want to come in here?
And we didn't meet.
And we didn't meet at all. So it's a great committee.
You did such a good job.
That's right. Anyone want to join into Yvonne just in case we have to change the bylaws?
I'll stay in there.
All right, Jim's in. I mean, James is in.
Yay.
I'll stay in also.
All right, Jim and James, all right, excellent. All right, we have a master plan committee. Last year was Yvonne, Jen, Rick, and myself as an alternate.
Yes, I'd like to stay in.
I'd like to stay in.
Okay, all right. Oh, everybody's jumping on this one. All right, we have Yvonne. Who else? Eric?
Yeah, but you only have to add an E to Rick's name, so it's easier.
All right, for master plan, we've got Yvonne, Eric,
Jen?
Jen. Okay, I can throw myself in as an alternate just in case we ever need, if wherever we need a fourth. I mean, if someone can't attend, if we have a meeting, I will put myself as an alternate.
Does that go for every one of them or just master plan?
No, that's for master plan.
Got it, okay.
I will not be an alternate for bylaws because I know that Yvonne has that well in control. And I will be an alternate for the design review as well. No, actually, I can't be an alternate because we don't have 3, so I have to be
You're
in.
the third.
Okay.
If you need an alternate, I could be an alternate for the design.
For design review? Okay, Jen is an alternate for design review. Terrific. Okay.
If you need it, you can put me as an alternate for master plan as well.
Okay,
I mean,
we'll put you in. Okay.
You want to be an alternate on the bylaws committee?
I think I'm on enough committees.
All right, I can move from the master plan committee and move myself to the bylaws as an alternate.
Okay.
I'll do that, because Michael just stepped into the master plan committee. Okay. The heavy lifting, just so that you guys know, heavy lifting is going to start probably in 2025 to 26, something in that area. We're going to be some heavy lifting in the master plan area. Okay. I have a nomination for the planning board official newspapers.
Before you do, excuse me, is everyone in favor of those appointments to the committees?
Yes.
Yeah. And we just need to hear yes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Okay, we're good. Now, sorry, Barbara, go ahead.
No problem. 2024 planning board official newspapers, Asbury Park Press and the Coaster.
I second that motion.
Yes.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
None opposed?
All right, the next one we have is the adoption of the 2024 planning board meeting schedule. Can I get a motion to approve or to agree to?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
None opposed?
Okay. This one's gonna be tricky. So now we have the minutes for approval. The first one we have was September 12th, 2022.
I have the list of everyone.
Oh, they're old.
Yeah, we're catching up for the website.
Okay, these are all catch-ups.
Mayor Moore is absent. Councilwoman Clayton.
So Yvonne can vote.
Councilwoman Clayton, okay, the people who can vote for the 9/12/22 regular meeting minutes are Mayor John Moore, Yvonne Clayton, Eric Gallipo, Jim Henry, Jennifer Souter, Daniel Shenameo, and Barbara Kurzak.
Okay, let's go. Do we have to do each one
Yeah, well, of everyone who's eligible,
of the eligibles?
okay.
Yes?
Vote yes? All
Yes.
those members?
Yes.
Yes.
Obviously, the people. who
Yes.
are here can. Any opposed? Minutes adopted.
Okay. For the January 9th, 2023 regular, reorgan regular meeting, the people who are eligible to vote are James Bonanno, Yvonne Clayton, Jim Henry, Jennifer Souter, Mike Goonan, and Barbara Kurzak.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those eligible in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Any
Yes.
opposed? Good.
The next set is the May 1st, 2023. Eligible members are John Moore, James Bonanno, Jim Henry, Jennifer Souter, Eric Gallipo, Michael Goonan, and Barbara Kurzak.
Move to approve.
Second, anyone?
Second.
Everyone who's eligible approve those minutes?
Yes.
Yes.
Any opposed? Approved.
12/18/2023. Eligible members, James Bonanno, Yvonne Clayton, Eric Gallipo, Jim Henry, Daniel Shenameo, Jennifer Souter, Michael Goonan, Barbara Kurzak.
Move to approve.
Second.
All those eligible approve?
Yes.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it.
Next is the...
Okay, next is the resolution for 700 Monroe is off the table today.
Mhm.
All right, that's off.
Moving to February 5th.
February 5th, we're going to move that to February 5th. The resolution for approval of 527 Bangs Avenue. I know that there was some late breaking change.
No.
No?
So 527 Bangs, there was the edits that went back and comments went back. Andrew agreed, and that was the end of it. So we have a final version.
Right.
So
What time was, give the time the final version was emailed, so everyone knows which version.
it was emailed at 4:32 p.m. this evening, and it was a black line copy, and there was also a draft copy attached, resolution of the amendment of approval. And the members that are eligible to vote on this one are James Bonanno, Councilwoman Clayton, Eric Gallipo, Jim Henry, Mayor Moore, Jennifer Souter, and Barbara Kurzak.
All right, motion to approve.
I have a couple of comments. On page 3, this third there are 3 whereases at the bottom of the page. The middle whereas, last line reads, "and will be in compliance with the waterfront redevelopment plan." I think that needs to come out. This is at.
This is on Bang, so this is not waterfront redevelopment plan. It should be,
So it's for Jeffrey, so what I'll do is I'll take notes, send an email, and then we will fix it. Yeah.
should we be putting in the central business
CBD
district
Yes.
versus
redevelopment plan?
Yeah, W, it's not CBD versus
Yeah.
WR.
Got it.
I would
Yep.
think.
Yes.
Any other comments?
Anybody else?
And also on page 2, there's a typo. The second whereas from the bottom. I think it should read, "make comments at the hearing," rather than "make comments at the hearing."
At the
I
hearing.
think just a,
Okay. Got that?
with those changes, I move to approve.
I second that.
Got that. Okay. James Bonanno,
Yes.
Councilwoman Clayton,
Yes.
Eric Gallipo,
Yes.
Jim Henry,
Yes.
Jennifer Souter,
Yes.
Barbara Kurzak.
Yes. Okay, next item on the agenda is the proposed accessory dwelling unit ordinance presentation by Michelle Alonso.
Hello, Michelle.
Hello. Hello and good evening and Happy New Year. Would you like to swear me in?
Yes, please.
Okay.
You solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about giving this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Please state your name for the record, spell it, and give us your affiliation with the city.
Michelle Alonso, Alonso. I'm the Director of Planning and Redevelopment, and I'm a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey.
Michelle, would you use the mic?
Yes. So Maria is bringing my
I
presentation
need
up.
to, they
And
power-
can you just, before we get started, what are you looking for from the board?
Well, this was referred to the planning board as a resolution by the municipal council that looking for the board to conclude whether this amendment to chapter 30 for accessory dwelling units complies with the master plan.
Okay.
All development ordinances and redevelopment ordinances and the like, before they're adopted by the mayor and council, legislative branch, they have to be referred to the planning board, especially in this context. Planning board gives it within a 35-day review, or such time is extended. Their comments regarding the consistency or inconsistency with the master plan with the proposed development ordinances, and such other items that we need developed. And we just do a quick resolution, we give you comments, so referral, it's comments and review, not mandatory on the mayor and council.
So once whatever comes out of what the resolution that comes from here then goes back to the council?
Mayor and council for them to take a look. You think you ought to take a look at this versus that?
Mhm.
We've done it numerous times, and then the council takes the information and goes with it as it pleases.
Okay, so it gets presented once, or they review it and they might need Michelle to come back or something,
Possible.
perhaps.
That's up to them.
They don't. They don't usually send
No, they
Michelle
don't
back.
usually send it
No,
back.
they usually don't.
If they wanted to, they could,
If they
but I'm
wanted
just saying, that's a discretionary thing. on their part. Usually we do it, we send it over, and that's it.
Okay.
Right, and there are suggestions, and maybe if they wanted to take on to those suggestions, then that's fine. If they don't, then they just,
Yeah, but-
It goes as is.
Because we gotta tell them,
Yeah.
do we think this is consistent?
You're gonna bottom right of the screen.
Thank you. There. No, no.
Just next to the minus. See the little
Yeah.
minus there? Yep, to the left. That
That guy?
guy? Yeah.
Like a sign.
There you go.
So for the record, why don't we make the referral resolution 2023-445, refer it over as C1. That's the resolution for mayor and council authorizing the board to undertake the review. And then the actual Asbury Park proposed ADU for an accessory dwelling unit ordinance January 22, 2024, why don't we make that C2?
But the one that we're looking at is from April 26th. Is that different from January 22nd, which
Oh,
we have?
that's the wrong one up on the screen.
Okay.
Okay.
But you have the correct one in your packet,
We
right?
do.
Must have just been to save to.
Shared drive. No, it's not good. That means I'll have it on the screen.
Maybe they're both in here.
No, that's it.
That's all.
No, that one though is as a PDF.
That's okay.
We'll scroll through that.
If you hit Control L on your keyboard.
Okay.
Okay.
So, for sure.
Okay, so again, once again, good evening. Thank you, commissioners, for entertaining this ordinance proposal tonight. This is going to be a change to the land development ordinance to chapter 30 to permit what is called an accessory dwelling unit, ADU for short. And I have on the first screen basically what is an ADU. That it's a residential dwelling unit located on the same lot as a standalone single-family home, although our ordinance, we've extended to 2 families, but many places in the country, ADUs have been used to supplement one-family housing. It can be a converted part of a main structure, or what's commonly known as, it is an outbuilding, and most commonly the conversion of a garage to living space. We already have quite a few of these in Asbury Park. Some of them were carriage houses before, some of them were actually developed as living space, others were converted, but currently our zoning ordinance does not permit the conversion of a secondary building, an accessory building, to habitable living space. So this ordinance is proposing to change that. And one of the reasons we're doing so is we're trying to create more varied housing types here in the city to be more affordable. Now, we use the term for accessory dwelling units as affordable with a little a, not a big A. The majority of these in the city will not be COA compliant and deed restricted. Well, when I go through the presentation, I'll talk about we will have like a financial incentive if someone chooses to do it, but it's more to increase the different types of housing stock in the city that could be more affordable. We term this in the planning world a lot of times as soft density because it's designed so that it doesn't feel as though it has an impact on neighborhoods, that it's not going to be discernible of changing a one-family district to what would essentially be a two-family district. Also, as I go through this presentation, the accompanying regulations to the ADU as far as design, parking standards, and other standards are also to not have a visual impact, or again, this feeling of increased density in low-density neighborhoods.
Michelle, excuse me. Would you like questions as we, on each page of your presentation, or shall I hold my questions to the end?
It's whatever everyone else wants. I'm open to either.
I think probably the flow is fine. I mean, if it doesn't disturb you, that we could just ask.
Okay.
As long as we're asking whatever's on the page,
Yeah.
not everywhere.
On the page that you just previously had up there, you indicated that the ADUs may be attached to the principal residential building, correct?
Yes.
In your text, it seems that is not what you say.
Correct.
So that's got to be reconcile.
No, so this is what is an ADU. So one of the things that meaning this
Okay,
is the
I'm
broad
sorry.
brush.
Go ahead.
Because with discussion with municipal council, we had basically, I had a presentation, a public hearing session. It is the desire of the council for the ADU not to be in the principal building. That's only going to be in the secondary building. But other communities throughout the U.S. permit it in the main structure. But I mean, some part of the rationale is that, well, if you permit in the main structure, you're really then a two-family home. Again, part of the idea of the outbuilding is the soft density. So that's just part of my introduction. Okay. Because I also saying it one family, but again, when I presented this to council, it was a decision that was made that it would be applicable to one and two family homes as long as you could park it, because that was another thing that we had discussed, whether we have a parking requirement, we don't have a parking requirement. But we had concluded that if you can, again, fit it on your property, and that you're not having an impact on the characteristic of the neighborhood, then we would be permitted the accessory building for one and two families. Yeah, I just explained that the proposed Asbury Park ADU ordinance will permit ADUs in detached structures, either conversion of an existing garage, additions to garages, or new cottages. One thing we are keeping in place is the current building coverage standards and the current impervious surface covered standards. So if you have a conforming lot for coverage, and you can expand your garage structure to accommodate an ADU if you don't exceed the already permitted building coverage and lot coverage.
What is the current residential lot coverage is?
It depends on the zone. I have R1 memorized. R1, and we're currently at building coverage for 30%, and impervious 65.
Oh, so most, yeah, it seems like it would be fine.
Well, that's the thing. If it's most, but again, if you have a very built-out lot already, maybe not.
You might have to change some stuff.
You may have to change some stuff if this is what you desire. All right, next slide. Thank you, Marie. So this is just a visual of different examples, and these are not all New Jersey specific, although my top one is more New Jersey specific. That is where you have the ADU. Sometimes they're called granny flats. Maybe I'll say granny flat above the actual garage structure. The next one is a structure that was built exclusively as an ADU, was not a garage before. My third one is a garage conversion into an ADU. And then my fourth photo is, again, a garage structure with a unit above the parking. Okay, next slide. So, does this comply with the master plan? I believe it does comply with the master plan. Our master plan calls for balanced housing options in the city, including affordable housing for low and moderate income households. Encourage the continued development of a variety of housing ranging from affordable, middle income, and market rate units. Fully integrate affordable housing throughout the city, both within projects and geographically throughout Asbury Park. By adopting the ADU ordinance and its placement in the R1, that definitely integrates affordable housing throughout the city, and it also in general encourages affordability. Again, when we say about this primarily affordability, not with the big A, it's the little a. Again, these are going to be smaller units, and it's the creation of more smaller units in the city that would be more affordable to some groups. Next. So, the regulations that you have before you for for considering Chapter 30. Again, as I said, it would permit the units in detached garages, above garages, and standalone structures in backyards. So that standalone structure may be in lieu of a garage if a property doesn't have a garage, or if the lot coverage permits it for your lot, it could be next to your garage. Only one accessory dwelling unit per property would be permitted. Only permitted for 1 and 2 families in the R1, the R2, the R3, and B districts. And for B districts, it's for those few lots of record that have single family or 2-family homes. There's a few of those abutting Main Street. Can be built in the location of a detached garage. Cannot be more than 20 feet in height. Cannot exceed the coverage requirements for the property, and must be of the same residential standards as a house. And I say that because besides having to meet the zoning code, these structures have to meet the uniform construction code in terms of habitability, meaning that it's not as easy as just like moving furniture into your garage or getting plumbing. It's got to have a foundation. It has to pass the same type of building code as the main house.
Right, so they need a certificate of occupancy for it to
Yes.
be real. Okay.
Yes.
So if there is a existing 2-family house on a parcel, they would be permitted to build a 3rd unit as an ADU,
Right, provided
provided they can meet all the.
others, because we did, as I stated, have the parking requirement for the unit. So right now in the 1-family district, it's 1.5 parking spaces per unit. So if you have a 2-family and you do an ADU, you're at 4.5, which bumps you up to 5. You have to be able to park 5 cars, comply with the design standards in the zoning ordinance, and not exceed your lot coverage with your paving to accommodate
Right,
those
so that's
cars.
if it's a 2-family and you put an ADU, that requires 5 cars.
Yeah,
You can park them on the driveway.
Yes.
Okay.
And again, when I say not exceed the coverage, has to abide by our laws with no front yard parking as a standalone. In other words, it aesthetically, like you can't pave your whole yard
It's still coverage.
to accommodate. You have to continue that look of a low density neighborhood.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
So it says it's R1, R2, and R3 districts, but then in the actual proposed legislation, it says it can only be in complement to a 1 or 2-family house. So if there is
Right.
So in the R3 district, if there is a multifamily building, you can't have it.
Correct.
The next question, are there any requirements for the ADU to match the aesthetics of the primary house?
Yes, I think that's on my next slide.
Okay,
I think.
and then my last
Wait,
question.
wait. Derek's like pointing his finger.
Before we move from this slide,
Yeah,
I
let's
just
stay on
want-
this one.
Yeah, I was. So in that 20-foot height limit, what counts? Do rooftop solar panels count?
No,
Okay.
it's our definition currently that we have, whether it's the ridge line of a peak roof, or if it's a flat roof, it's the top of the flat.
You haven't covered design standards, so I'll keep my question
Okay.
about flat roofs until then.
Okay, I have one more question here though. So, the legislation says it's subordinate to the primary
I
house.
wanted to ask what that.
What does that mean? What prevents someone, if you have a big lot, from just building 2 houses?
Because because the part about the ADU, which is on my next slide, is that it has to be owner occupied. Now, when I say this, the zoning code itself does not talk about owner occupancy because the zoning code cannot. This will have paired with it a different part of the municipal code that requires an annual certification where if you are the property owner, the homeowner, that you have to register your ADU every year.
But what stops someone from just building 2 houses? I could own both. My parents live in one, I live in one.
Well, that you can do, but your second house, your accessory dwelling unit, and it is also meant for people to be able to move parents in, that you have to meet the minimum lot coverage, the building coverage, the height can't be more than 20. So you can build 2 homes, but one is going to be smaller than the other.
So there's no requirement for the square footage of the ADU to be some percentage of the primary dwelling?
No.
There's something just said about, so what does incidental and subordinate mean?
Go back to the first slide.
Yes, sorry. It's not on here, but we covered it. What does incidental and subordinate actually translate to?
To accessory.
Okay.
So it is secondary to the primary unit. So again, the primary unit is supposed to be the owner-occupied unit.
Would a owner not be able to occupy the ADU?
Well, I did put that provision in. I did put that.
Limited?
No, you could swap out.
Yeah, I mean,
Meaning-
because
But
from
the owner has to be on the property.
Yes, the owner
Yes.
must
Yeah, that
live
makes
on the
sense.
property.
That makes sense.
But
Yes.
like you could, an owner could move from their larger unit into the smaller unit and rent out the other one.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see
Yeah.
that would be a.
I mean, it's actually, I
Makes
think, I
sense.
see that as a benefit because because all of the ADUs are gonna be small.
Yeah.
And the front units might be larger.
Mm-hmm.
So it gives us this opportunity to see a broader profile of unit types.
I think that makes sense.
I mean, it did come up, originally we were only gonna have that the smaller unit be the accessory, but we did have comments of the municipal council by older people, like you're talking about one scenario, the more traditional scenario is that an older couple who owns the home, moves to the accessory and their children move to the main. That's like the typical. It doesn't mean it is every scenario, but that is usually the envisioned scenario.
That makes sense.
So in that scenario, the primary home becomes the ADU?
Mm-hmm, yes.
So the
But-
ADU can be bigger than the primary home?
But your ADU can't have more than one unit.
Right.
So
Yes.
the primary home,
Cannot be a,
like if
Two-family.
if you have a 2-family primary home and build an ADU,
I'm sorry, say that, wait.
so you have a 2-family primary home and you are permitted to build an ADU.
But the intent is not for a 2-family to be rented out as a 2-family then. Meaning that the intent is not for the for the 2-family itself to be the rental unit.
But that,
Why?
both of the 2-family. Like, let's say if it's a 2-floor, if it's a 2-family, are you saying that the person that owns the lot can move into the ADU, let's say the smaller unit, and then they can rent the 2 or no?
Well, you're bringing up, that was not the
'Cause-
intent, but you're bringing up a very good point, because that was not the intent.
Right, it may not be the intent, but I don't see that that's,
I don't think you should be
Unusual.
prevented from, you should, if you are the property owner, you should occupy one of the units.
one of the units on the property.
And you should be able to rent the remaining 2.
Right, but the
Not as
ADU
short-term.
still remains as the
one in the
smaller
back.
unit.
The one you built.
The one you built.
Yes.
The ADU, so the primary owner can theoretically move into the ADU and rent whatever else.
The 2
bigger-
units they have.
The 2 units or a bigger house or whatever. Was that, I know, I understand that wasn't the intent, but
I feel like that makes a
I
lot
can't
of
see that
sense.
that's,
Well,
Because it provides, so the investment that's required to build these ADUs will not be insignificant.
right, it won't be into
Right, and so I think a lot of people are gonna be looking at that equation and saying, okay, once I build this ADU, how do I maximize my income from my rentals? I hope that people will do this in an affordable manner. I would also hope that one could consider, well, we haven't talked about bonuses yet, but this does relate to the bonuses offered.
Well, let's,
Yeah.
before we talk about that, let's get there. So are we, I'm sorry, I understand that wasn't the intent, but that is
But
allowed.
no, but listen,
Go ahead.
conforming and non-conforming two-family uses where both units are in the principal building are permitted to have an ADU in a separate structure. If they
Right?
can meet the requirements of an ADU.
Non-conforming?
Conforming, non-conforming two-family uses, yes.
So if you've got a non-conforming two-family in an R1 zone, you're gonna allow them to build without isn't that an extension of a non-conforming use by putting a third unit on there?
Well, but this permits it as the accessory.
It's a permitted use.
Okay.
But what I'm saying,
Ain't that one through?
yeah, I did think that through. But here's the issue more that I'm bringing up now. About, this states that if you have a two-family, that your ADU has to be in the separate structure.
Understood. I
Yeah.
just want to make sure that you aren't restricted from, well, an owner is not restricted from which unit they can live in.
Apples and peaches. You're saying the ADU has to be a separate structure.
Yes.
That's not defined occupancy. It
Right.
defines the unit itself,
Correct.
which is an accessory unit. But you go to the next step is, you're not saying by making it an accessory unit that who can live there.
Right. An owner must occupy one.
No, this is,
Except where they get incentives,
But-
then they're
Oh, well, then
restricted.
let's find out. We haven't gotten there yet.
but to me, conforming and non-conforming two-family uses where both units are in the principal structure are permitted to have an ADU in a separate structure.
Mhm.
Right?
Understood.
All right.
That all makes sense.
The definition of ADU doesn't define who's living inside it, just the structure itself.
Yes.
So I think the way you have written
It's fine.
the small structure is still the ADU.
Right.
Regardless of if the primary owner of the property lives in it.
Right, that's the question. Is the requirement just that the owner of the structures resides in any one of the units on the property? Whether it's the primary structure or the ADU?
This was intended that if you have a two-family, your ADU has to be the smaller structure.
Yeah,
That's
so
fine.
the owner
Who's
can have
gonna
the
occupy?
ADU.
That's a separate issue from who's gonna occupy.
I think the definition of ADU maybe might be the way to fix that. Like, if ADU means that the accessory occupant has to live in it, and that.
Okay.
If it.
Yeah, you may need to go a step further.
But I feel like we had consensus up here in providing a recommendation to the council to say that we shouldn't limit which unit.
The owner lives
In
in.
a 3-unit situation, 1 ADU and 2, that the owner can live in any one of those 3 units.
They have to be on the lot.
Yes, the structure is an accessory
The
structure.
structure is an accessory, they could live
But
in
the owner can live
in unit 1, 2, or accessory.
I disagree with the two-family one, just because as a person who can't afford their own home, I'm saying what I think my experience would be. People who already own a home, build a small one, they can afford to move into that one, and they rent those 2 large ones out for more profit.
Actually,
There's nothing in here controlling the prices of these units, and I feel like even though we're making, we're more, like, we're allowing that in every scenario, we're allowing everyone to make a lot more money than we are for a reasonable housing. But I understand both points.
actually, that's a really good point, James,
Yeah.
because the point of this is for it to be the lower price.
Right.
However,
You're right.
And to provide housing
in
for
most
people who
in
don't
cases
necessarily
where
need to
the
get it.
2-family already exists, those, I'll use my home as an example. My unit is a 4-bedroom house, and we have a small 1-bedroom unit upstairs. It's too small for us. I would love to move into an ADU. We still rent out the small one, and the big one would also be rented. And, that's the situation that would work best for us.
Right, but the net gain to the community is a higher priced unit that
A 4-bedroom,
people can't afford.
but the net gain to the community is a 4-bedroom
Right.
unit that is not necessarily like that. If the ADUs are all 1 and 2 bedrooms, this allows a 4-bedroom to come onto and there's no affordability control on that ADU.
No, there isn't, but a 4-bedroom is gonna cost a lot more than a
But I don't
1-bedroom.
understand why we wouldn't allow it in a 2-bedroom, in a 2-family scenario, we would allow it in a 1-family scenario.
I agree. I mean, I understand.
I think it should be the same.
Yes,
Either it's
no, I
allowed or it's
understand.
not.
I understand. I understand.
I have
That's
another
interesting.
follow.
Sorry.
Why
World.
you're gonna allow an expansion of a non-conforming use by putting an accessory structure. So you're now giving them a pass under the zoning ordinance in terms of non-conforming. You're expanding a non-conforming use, which the law disfavors. What's to say, okay, I own a 2-family in Asbury, I have the square footage, I wanna come in, I don't wanna put an accessory unit there, I want a variance to put I wanna extend, I wanna put an addition onto my house to put a 3rd unit in. You're giving them a back door to expand a non-conforming use without getting a use variance of D1 or D2. Why?
Again, the idea was to try to create more housing, types of housing, so you would be permitted to do it as the detached, but you would not be permitted to do it as part of your main structure.
So when I have my application before the zoning board and I'm arguing, I'm being discriminated against. I have the basis for an extension of a non-conforming use because I'm not intensifying the use of the land any more than the person who puts an accessory structure. I'm not against the 2-family that's permitted expanding and putting the 3rd unit in. I'm questioning the wisdom of giving someone a pass who's already got a non-conforming use, allowing them to expand the non-conforming use without the necessity for a use variance. You would have to get under any other.
Right, you're simply saying that conforming.
A 2-family house in the R1 zone.
Yep. Yes, I certainly am.
Right, so your suggestion is that the legal way to do it is a conforming use in the single-family zone would be permitted a ADU, but a non-conforming use.
Or a 2-family in a conforming 2-family zone.
Yeah,
For the 3rd unit, but not to give somebody an opportunity to expand a non-conforming use, which the law disfavors.
Mhm.
You're still intensifying that use on that property over and above what's permitted. Now you've gone from, it was 1, now you had 2, which wasn't permitted, now you've got 3.
right, I understand.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that the wisdom, just think about it, because you could be opening Pandora's box.
Sorry, I'll come back, I'll let you finish and then,
From a legal
sorry.
perspective. And
Right.
from a philosophical perspective or a legislative perspective, the philosophy or the policy behind the city's encouraging this, that's a distinct item. But the person that's got the non-conforming 2-family already has a pass.
Yes. And we originally wrote this as for 1 families, and then we had quite a bit of public comment from multifamily property owners. And then it was like, well, what prevents, a multifamily from adding the extra unit if it's supposed to be like soft density? And again, it goes back to,
That wouldn't be soft density, because you've already got a non-conformity. Now you're intensifying the non-conformity. That's a major impact.
well, I was going to say, like, some of the thresholds of the conformity and the impact is, can you have a multifamily on the property, yet it keeps all the characteristics of a 1-family? And that not only includes the parking, includes storing the garbage, and includes how the whole property looks as a whole.
So me, planner. What do you think?
Well, as a planner or as
You want a visual to look a certain way. You want it to look as if it's a single family. What will happen?
You mean for it to look like a single family?
Isn't that what your intent is? You want it to be a soft increase.
Right.
That does not from curb give you an urban urban feel, that all of a sudden you've taken an R1 area and converted it into multifamily.
Right, so what that means is that, again, you have to make sure you are at 30% lot coverage and that you are at 65% impervious and that you're parking, that you can park all these cars and still have the look of a driveway that belongs to a single family. You have to make sure all your garbage is stored out of sight.
You probably have a pretty good chance, in the size lots that we have in town, that if there's already 2 families there, you put a third family on, the third unit on there, you may very well exceed one of the bulk requirements and require a variance, but there may be a few that would slip through. And so I'm just suggesting that you ought to think that one through about giving somebody a pass for expansion of the non-conforming use.
But when we're talking about that, are we talking about a lot of these are in town? These non-conforming? Are there a lot of these?
Well, there's a ton, yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, just
it's
on my
only
block,
just-
there's
We go
10.
on these runs, all of a sudden, everybody comes in, they've got units that nobody knew existed.
Wait a minute. Actually, I want to amend my statement. Very few of the non-conforming buildings in the single-family zone are less, like, they're more than, like, my block, which is, except for my lot, my block is zoned single-family. There is one single-family home on our block. All the rest are 3, 4, 5, 7, 12, and 13. And none of those would qualify for an ADU.
Okay.
Can you make it by adding the word conforming? In other words, a conforming 2-family house? Limit the ADU to those conforming 2-family units.
All right, so then that would eliminate the 2 families in the R1. It would then just be 2 families in the
Right.
R2 and the R3.
Which is a very large potential pot of lots that might be able to build the ADU, are these non-conforming 2 families in a single-family zone.
So if that's a recommendation of the board to the municipal council, that we can say that, but
I don't think that we should, I don't think that we should take away the 2-family option.
I'm in this camp.
I think
I agree.
I think it makes,
I agree as well.
I mean, one, a lot of public made that comment, and 2, that it's a lot of existing. I mean, I think it serves what we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to do, to be able to add 1 ADU to a 2-family.
But you're opening up the city to quite a bit of potential litigation.
I think there's a chance you'll have some applicants that push the envelope in this scenario. I think the vast majority of them wouldn't be an issue. And I think making a blanket no statements of all 2-family non-conforming homes is less advantageous than dealing with a few problem scenarios.
Yeah, I feel like, the exact same way, I feel like bulk is more important, so if this fits, the ADU fits on the lot, according to standards and setbacks and everything, what does it matter if 1 family or 2 families live in the house?
With coverage, yeah, I know something that I brought up earlier too is like, he was asking what are the size requirements for these ADUs. I think a lot of those size requirements, other than height, which is 20 feet, are controlled by those lot coverage.
Yes. Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's the idea. It's not necessarily square footage, it's the height, you can't go higher than 20 feet. You also can't cover this much space.
Right.
And so, I mean, if you have a large lot that has a 2-family home on it, and you fit it, what's the harm? If you have a lot that's, crowded with this 2-family home, that an ADU is gonna make it look like an urban area, it's probably not gonna meet the lot coverages. I don't think it's gonna be that common a scenario where it's gonna cause a problem.
Well, just as an example, James, when the developer comes in with a subdivision plan for the Holy Spirit Church, we're not getting 6 units, we're getting 12, because he can add the ADUs under this.
That entirely depends on the lot coverages.
Right, it depends on lot coverage
And-
and the length of the driveway and impervious, and it depends on all that.
And if they can get a single family and a ADU in the back, that's better than a single family.
Exactly. Exactly.
No, you're right, it is possible.
Yeah.
It is possible, as
Yeah.
long as it adheres to the rules.
And there's plenty of vacant well, no, there are some vacant developable lots in the city within residential zones that may qualify for 3 units based on this, 2 and an ADU. That's fine. I think that's great. It's better than just 2 families, to me. I think it's better.
This does take me back to the comment about the size of the primary versus the size of the accessory. Especially if you think about these 6 units where Holy Spirit Church is now. What stops them from just building 12 houses that are all the same size?
That
is size.
Two houses.
We have a minimum lot size.
They're big lots.
I mean,
So
they're
I
big
personally
lots.
think the accessory unit should be, X percentage of the square footage of the primary unit. Like there should be a maximum.
However, there are examples of small existing homes on large lots. And what you would be saying is if you have a small cottage, small structure on a large lot, the new thing that you build must be some percentage of something that's already small, making it, so you could have like something unbuildable. So,
Right.
Yeah.
You're right,
yeah,
but
I don't think it's
I
common.
understand what
Yeah,
Michael is
yeah.
saying is that
For new
you could turn,
construction, maybe, like,
well, but it has to be behind
right, it's new construction. You don't want that to happen
it
on new
doesn't have to be
construction.
behind.
the ADU.
No, it doesn't say it has to be behind.
Just can't be in the front yard.
Well, I mean, that's what it would be if it wasn't behind. Well, it could be side by side, I guess. Yeah.
Well, it's not intended to be side by side.
Well, that's,
No, it must be.
Side by side, now you
Yeah.
have 2 principal structures on one lot. You go side by side.
But that's my point. Nothing in here says,
that it has to be in the back.
yes, it feels like they're 2 principal structures,
Sure
but
does. Sure
Right.
does.
does the legislation?
Accessory by its nature is subservient to the main.
There may be there may be a basket of situations which you want to create an administrative review of that, so it's like if you have a vacant lot and you want to do an ADU, it needs to be approved by
It has to be
the
approved by zoning
no, I mean like yes, it has to be approved by the construction department.
and zoning.
And zoning, and so
Yeah,
zoning
zoning.
would, so for new construction, you would say, it has to be approved by the zoning officer and that's where you would get somebody saying, this doesn't really meet the spirit of this
Nah.
legislation.
Yeah. No spirit.
Means nothing.
No, I understand,
It has to
okay,
be
so,
definitive.
so I'm curious, like, is there a basket of conditions or like special reviews?
So I'm gonna say now for new construction, can we say, if a primary residence is built after this legislation goes into effect, there can be a square footage limitation on ADU? Because I can see on an empty lot, someone really taking advantage, just building 2 structures.
Well, I think what's coming out of this is that you have to think big picture and all potential scenarios. Of course, in law, you close one door and you open 2. But you gotta try and come up with some mechanism that's gonna make sure your thought is broad, that you're realizing the potential where the pitfalls are. Obviously, it was never your intent to have 2 primary structures facing 4th Avenue between
Whatever.
Burke and Hackett, right? Okay, you want one in the back, you want the accessory in the back the way they traditionally were, with the old cottage houses, the old garage apartments within the city. So you just have to make sure that whatever the mechanics are, and the guidelines, the written bulk requirements, et cetera, they're in there, that's all.
But
I'm
doesn't-
saying.
but
I'm not
it's-
saying anything should be.
But it defines the ADU, it says incidental and subordinate.
Yeah.
So doesn't subordinate say smaller in the rear, that kind
Yeah,
of
but-
gives you
Yeah.
all of these.
But think
Yeah,
like a
and-
lawyer.
And it
you
can
should-
only be 20 feet high,
But if
and it can't, and there are limits to how close it can be to the neighbors. And it can't be overlooking, you can't have a terrace on it, so you're looking into somebody
My only concern
else's
is
house.
Legally, the subordinate have a meeting. Could I come
I
to the
don't
city
know,
and say,
that was my question. Yeah, I don't know.
By using that shows intent, subordinate.
Right.
But if you have the appropriate guidelines, Yvonne's saying, everybody's saying, just make sure that you have enough checklist
Teeth
items
there, yeah.
that say that
And it
they
does.
can't
Yes.
slip through somehow and reverse them. Turn it into a non-accessory structure, getting closer to the street than you want it to be. So now all of a sudden it appears like you have 2 principal structures on one lot without a subdivision. That's all, and that's not what you want, so whatever you just need to make sure you have the right guidelines in there that'll work for the zoning officer and the code and the construction official when they see a plan come through, that they can check off.
To Michael's point, Jack, could the wording be such that it's a percentage, ADU would be the percentage of the main house, except if the main structure is of a certain size? That gets too complicated.
Yeah, like what's the right?
But I think that what Yvonne said makes total sense. It's like, it's a subordinate structure. It can't be higher than this. It can't look like this. It
Can't be this, it can't be that. There are
Right.
so many
Yeah,
restrictions
with all
built
the
already
into
right
it.
have that.
guidelines in there, you're not gonna get boxed out. or boxed in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, that you can't,
I totally get that. I just think maybe we need to give some definition of what subordinate means so people can't take advantage.
well,
Because the spirit of this is so good.
right.
Before, I am
Go
going to
ahead.
ask that we add, because we do say an ADU shall not be built between the principal building and a street or the front property line of the lot upon which it's situated. I do want to add language that it has to be behind the principal
That's right.
structure.
That's it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That will take care
There
of
you
that.
go.
But
That it can't be next to it.
Has
It's
to be behind.
essentially, it's gotta be in the back.
I would argue that it shouldn't, like, there may be special situations where just the configuration or shape of the lot, and so maybe it's like, must be at least 2/3 back, so that you still.
Isn't that what the
Well,
zoning board
That's
is
called a
for?
variance.
But that's a variance, right? That's right, because I understand that, I mean, we have a lot of good intentions, but some of these things, when it goes to the zoning board, it can be a variance.
Right.
And say, okay, I don't
Because you'll
hit
say
this
based
one
on
thing.
shape, size, topography, et cetera, classic.
That's right, it might
variance,
pass,
We should only be
Yeah.
2/3 of the way back instead of
Yeah.
back in the corner.
right. And that's, I think we have to leave ourselves open for variances.
So like on before, the more you strict you make it, you lose more than you gain. You, instead of fighting a few problem cases, you lose a bunch of good potential subjects. It's better to have to deal with the bad situations and have
Yes.
to come in
Right.
than just
Yes.
lose out on a bunch of
Agree.
benefits.
I agree,
Agreed.
absolutely.
Can we go back, though? I don't think we ever really developed consensus around the ability of the owner to occupy
Wait,
any of the units.
Can I ask if we continue through here? Because we don't, I mean, you know something about bonuses, I don't know anything about any bonuses, any money, anything that's going on here, so can we go through that? And then, yes, we have to go back to it. Yes, sure.
All right.
Absolutely.
Next slide.
There we are. We've been trying to get to this slide. Go ahead.
So as I said, I feel like we went through a bunch of this. One parking space per ADU is required. I misspoke. It's 1.5 for the principal house, then it's one for the ADU, so that's 4 spaces total.
Okay, so
I
no
mean, I'm
matter
sorry,
how many.
I misspoke. You
1.5
have a one
per
family, you got 1.5, and then 1 space for the ADU, so you're bumped up to 2 for one family.
Well, it's 1.5
And 3.
and a 1,
1.5 plus 1.
The half always
Three.
finds out.
Thank
so
you.
3. And then,
For a two-family.
Two-family.
It's
Two-family.
3 plus 1.
Yes,
Right.
I'm sorry.
so it's 4. But but also, it doesn't matter how many bedrooms we're talking about. We're just talking about,
Units.
that's the general concept.
Right.
Okay.
As in, the number of spaces changes based on bedrooms?
I asked that, and it
Yeah.
sounds as though that doesn't matter. It's like 1.5 for the main. If there's a second story, it's a 1 there, and the ADU gets 1. So that's,
Right, I mean,
that's 4.
Our current zoning doesn't differentiate, well,
Right.
not counting redevelopment areas, because that's
Right,
where
that's
you
different.
see that bedroom count based on spaces for multifamily, but the one family zones is not per bedroom.
Okay. All right. Let's go.
Okay, cannot be a short-term rental, either unit. Cannot be subdivided from the principal structure. Will require a zoning permit review, but they will not be coming to this board. They will be treated like we do 1 and 2 families unless it's triggering a variance. If you want to build one, you have a zoning permit review with the zoning officer. If all is good, then it goes on to the building department. Has its own design standards, which we talked about a little bit today, about placement of balconies, and it must have its own entrance, and must comply with the community design standards that are already in the zoning ordinance. will require an annual certificate with occupancy requirements. That is the owner occupancy part that I was discussing, which is not going to be part of the zoning ordinance, but that is something that the municipality desires with the ADUs. Okay, the incentives. So out of the incentives would come out of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that we have. And this is if someone is open to having a 10-year affordability deed restriction on the property. So just like you all just reviewed 700 Monroe, where there's going to be a 20% affordable requirement, but that affordable requirement means that it has to go through a very rigorous procedure where it has to follow the county affordability guidelines, has to be registered with our affordable housing administrative agent. They have to do a yearly report, and that there's a specific procedure of how tenancy is selected, and that the property, that the owner just can't turn anyone away from rental, and the owner has to take from a list of people who have put themselves on a list desiring to live in an affordable unit here in Asbury Park. So if someone's willing to do all that, they can get construction bonuses from the municipality paid out of the Affordable Housing Trust Fund. So $20,000 per moderate unit, $30,000 per low income, $35,000 per very low income.
I have a quick question on that.
Sure.
Is the money, was that money, decision-making around those amounts, did that come out of, how did those numbers come about?
We took them from another municipality.
Okay.
That's how it came about.
I just wasn't sure if it was some kind of like analysis of, rent projections or something, or like if it was a comparison of, okay, if I rented at market rate, it would be this would make it worthwhile to do this, or if it was just from, you answered the questions from another municipality. I just didn't know initially if, where the numbers, meaning to make it like worthwhile, or however you want to say it, that someone said, okay, I'm going to do okay in the end because I have to rent it for this amount, I get this money, it helps defray that cost.
Or
So-
it helps by construction costs to build a unit, and then if I just leave it for 10 years, then I can go to market rate. So.
Right. So no, we didn't do an in-depth analysis. We took it from another municipality. And I feel like it's a wait and see. The other part about it is our Affordable Housing Trust Fund is infantile at the moment, meaning we don't have a lot of money in it. So there's that aspect as well.
So this issue of affordability too, I'm curious if the municipality would be open if somebody said, owner said, I want to build an ADU and I want to occupy that ADU, would you accept a deed restriction on one of the other units as affordability? And to be honest, the goals are to provide a range of housing choice and increase affordability both for owners and for occupants. So downsizing is one of the big benefits of this. And if you build a unit and you're not able to downsize, there's no incentive to build the unit. So we have to make sure that the equation is attractive enough to owners to do it. And the fact that it's not a short-term rental is great. These should definitely not be short-term rentals. But as long as a rental is 29 days or longer, it's not short-term. So you can rent it for a month at a time in the summer for $10,000 a month and not rent it at all.
Not the ADU, because it has to be registered. We have to know who you're renting it to. There are a number of restrictions going along with this so that this unit does not become
nor do I think it should be.
It doesn't become a summer rental.
100%. We are violently agreed. Yes. None of those things should be the case, but But you are restricting only short-term rentals. Anything that's 30 days or longer isn't a short-term rental. So
Under what definition?
that's not a short-term rental. You can rent anything for a month at a time, and it's not a short-term rental. That's our own regulations.
Again, that's not the goal of the ADU. The ADU
Correct,
is
it's not the
long-term
goal, but this
rentals.
but it would allow this, so that if the registration requirements are going to be that that the leases must be of a specific length. That's not what this is. It's not saying it can't be short-term rental, therefore it must be annual.
Michelle, what do you have to say about that?
I was gonna say I would need to check with the municipal attorney if I can restrict other terms of rental other than short-term rental. Because short-term rental allows continuous rental without inspection between tenants. And I'm unsure of what the laws say about municipal powers over rental tenancies. If I can put a provision in that ordinance that doesn't come to you guys to say for an ADU, you must have a lease with a tenant that's a year.
No, I don't want that. I want to be clear.
That's what you
No, but
feel
what I'm
like you're
saying is
saying.
that
No,
short-term
I'm saying that's what we're running the risk of.
short-term
That's not
rentals are anything less than 30 days.
Right.
That's what our own ordinance
Correct.
says.
But what I'm
So
Mhm.
there is nothing stopping an owner for renting an ADU for 30 days, thus not being a short-term rental, for just the 4 months of the summer to 4 different
Right,
tenants.
but you need a certificate every time that person leaves. A certificate of occupancy, every time that person leaves.
Okay.
The ADU.
Okay, but there's nothing preventing somebody from essentially turning it into a monthly rental.
And that's what I'm saying,
That's what Michelle will have to,
I need to
work out.
check if we can put that restriction, because we have a whole section of code based on rental and inspection, and I'll look into it. I mean, it's a very, very good point. And again, that's a question for Fred Raffetto.
The Condominium Act permits leases to be of a certain length. Off the top of my head, I don't remember exactly, but I think you can have a 180-day lease with no problems. And that's, I don't know if it rolls over to normal rentals, but in a condo setting, that can be restricted to a certain length. You know,
well, it'll up to Fred to help figure out what the right wording for this is. Because we understand what the intent is. But we don't want this to be a summer rental either, because that doesn't make any sense. That's not what the point of this is.
Yeah, or seasonal.
Seasonal, any seasonal.
I want to avoid that.
Right.
Yeah, agreed. I just have to make sure we can do that, because currently we don't have a restriction on seasonal rentals.
And that's how many people get around the Airbnb regulations.
Understood, but I think there's a reason for that, but I'm gonna check with Fred.
Right, so obviously we want to do what's right for the city and what makes sense here, but you understand what the,
Yes, and most intent,
What our
that's why
concern
we
is.
said no short-term rental, because because again, back to the intent of the system is affordability
Yes.
for people.
right.
Owners and occupants.
So what are we recommending? If legal, the minimum term for a rental is?
Well, whatever, it's got
Well,
to
here's
be.
the thing, this is a part you can't make
Yeah.
a formal recommendation or resolution, because the part we're talking about is not the zoning part. But I'm taking this in serious consideration, even though it's not part of this.
Sure, we have the right to look at it in terms of, it's here, we're giving you, we come up with a good idea.
Mhm.
Maybe somebody wasn't thinking about this.
No, but it's not in this chapter 30,
Well,
because it
you-
can't be.
the board has the right to say, we suggest that you look at the term of the rental, so that you don't get involved in short-term rentals, and it becomes a revolving door for summertime rentals a year, other than that, right? Isn't that what you're
We can
looking for?
suggest, right, we
You're
can,
saying this has separate orders.
That's okay, but you can still make the recommendation that
Ex-
when doing all this, make sure you look at that.
Well, as long as we phrase it saying, making explicit, not part chapter 30, because here was what this took so long, is that, well, it's been, you're not allowed, as you know, in the land use ordinance to dictate tenancy. And we had to put, like, I spent a lot of time researching how to achieve this tenancy without talking about in chapter 30.
Okay.
So,
You come up with, it's up to the other branches in City Hall to figure out where
yes,
they're
Right.
gonna come up with this.
yes,
You know
because that's
the
what we
issue,
want to
you're
avoid.
facing.
Right.
Yes.
It might have to be a separate ordinance.
might
no,
be
it
something
is.
else.
It is. So what you don't have before you, there was a separate certificate ordinance that is going in the rental code about this. But the reason you don't have it before you, so other municipalities have been challenged with talking about tenancy and occupancy in their zoning ordinances and had them overturned. So that's why we're getting creative in Asbury Park, and I've had various legal reviews about this in the creation of the separate ordinance with the certificate program. But what I'm saying is when you do your resolution to council, for Jack to word it very carefully so it does not look like the planning board is dictating tenancy.
We have a pro forma resolution, we put in recommendations. One of the recommendations could be, planning board recommends the following, that is 1 through 5, so here's number 6. The term of what your rentals are gonna be. Just look at it. We're not telling you what to do, we're just telling you to look at it.
When the council considers the tenancy ordinance, consider this.
Yeah, that's all. We're not saying it should be less than a year, or more than a year. We're not telling you what to do, but we're telling you that you better look at it, because if you don't, you could wind up having a revolving.
Right.
Or something that's only rented 4 months a year and just sits empty until they can make all their money all summer,
It's really up to you.
which is terrible. Nobody should do that. Nobody should do that.
Well, what people do now is, people who have ADUs, they live in their ADU for the summer and rent out their house, which doesn't accomplish what we want to happen.
But at the same time, these are houses that people own and they're free to do what they want with them as long as it's legal. And so we can't minimize the ability of people to make money on their property. Is iStar the only person who's allowed to make money in town? You know, like that's the reality, is that, you know, we are all landowners. And if
James is.
If a large house a large old house is expensive to maintain, the equation might be much better for the owner to move into the back house with a greater revenue coming in order to maintain the assets. And there, you know, those are, you know, it increases affordability for people who already live in their homes to build these ADUs. It is a huge investment. We're talking $200,000 for a very basic ADU. That's a huge investment for people. This isn't like a $60,000 thing you're plopping down. You have new utilities, you have a new sewer line, you've got to redo your driveway, you've got paving, you've got site work, you've got foundations, and the actual thing that you have to build. So if you are saying, well, you can only build it but you can't maximize the profit you make from it, why is that fair to the owner?
Is the intention.
Yeah.
But you're creating units.
Based on but are you?
You are, yes.
But you're creating larger units.
Larger units
But that's
for
not what we
families.
need.
That's not what we're looking for.
That's not what we're looking
That's
for.
not the goal.
We do need larger units,
Creating a
actually.
profit generator.
We
You're
actually,
emphasizing the profit
hold on.
generation.
Okay.
It's not
The
just-
We
secondary
actually do
is
need,
have the other units.
we actually do need larger units. We need units in a range of profiles. And we tackle that issue specifically every time we talk about applications for large multifamily buildings, where we say, the legislation says we want some ones, some twos, some threes, and some fours. There shouldn't be a negative connotation to say that this is creating a new 3-bedroom unit in the large house along with a 1-bedroom and a 1-bedroom. Those things do put a broader range of units on the market, and it also increases affordability for the person who owns it, or choice for the person who owns it.
So today, with what's written right now, is there a restriction as to where the owner has to live? Is there anything in this that says where does the owner
No,
have
but
to
going back to, if you have the 2-family, you have to live in the main structure, but if you have the 1-family,
live? Then you can live in either one.
Right.
Where does it say that? And to the incentives.
Hang on, let
Right.
her finish. Let her finish her thought.
oh, I already have in here the floor area and buildings
Yeah,
coverage of the
I found it. I
ADU
didn't
shall
wanna see
not
it.
exceed that of the principal use and structure. We already have that.
It also says the bulk requirements that control the location of a garage structure of the zoning district. So it also puts it where the garage should be.
That answers a lot.
Yes.
Michelle, what number is it?
That's
I'm
M.
on page
It's on
5,
page 5.
on D.
Oh, yeah.
No, it's okay, because I have, but now I have to find about the other. Because that came up during, Yvonne remembers, that came up during our sessions.
It sounded like from your description that you intended for it to be that way, but the wording wasn't clear. Literally, it could have been down to the floor, you were describing how it's written.
Creating a small ADU in the back does not guarantee affordability. What's to stop somebody from
Wait.
renting it at twice the market rate? Nothing.
Hold on, we're still looking
Yep.
at this one statement. Let's stick to the topic before we get to another issue.
But I think she said it's not, there's nothing.
There's nothing what?
There's nothing in here that says the ADU of a 3-family.
The 2-family that you have to be in the main.
Yeah.
We found that before, but
Was that the intention of the council to have
the intention of
that?
the council was
No.
that if it's the 2-family, because we talked about this at length.
Mhm.
If you have a multifamily structure, the intent is for the ADU to be in the rear structure. If you have a 1-family structure, and you, again, this whole age-in-place idea is that you could exchange the two. I'm sorry, I apologize, I can't find the language off the top of my head.
But that is the intent.
Yes, but I have to make sure it's in here as we had discussed at council.
Well, I can understand that if it is
That's
missing, but if Yvonne also says that
That's
that was the intent, they want it in there, then
So I will play
Then
the
it-
counter to this, which is to say that if you allow an ADU in the back for a 2-family unit, and the person is going to have to take on the cost of building that ADU, all you are doing is inflating the cost of the ADU. So there's no anybody with a 2-family unit can build a 3rd ADU provided they can meet all of the bulk standards and residential requirements, right? The cost whatever it costs them is what that ADU is going to cost to rent. And they have no requirement to be affordable at all. And so
But
why are you restricting people who would have that ability from downsizing into a smaller unit if that's what works for their life situation and allows them to remain? Because that's the issue, is it may be that people can't remain because their houses are too large. too expensive.
Is it that, or are we saying that if an ADU cost $200,000, let's say, what would the rent have to be? Is that considered affordable housing for lower moderate income households?
No, we're not, this is just somebody who decides not to take the bonuses. Somebody
I
who just
understand,
says,
but over
"I'm
here
gonna-"
it says that from the master plan, it says that the point of this is that we have to do the housing options in the city, including affordable housing for low and moderate income households. Encourage the continued development of a variety of housing ranging from affordable to middle income and market rate units.
So that would support everything. All of what we're saying is, yes, ADUs would create a greater number of smaller units. But allowing a owner in the larger unit to move into the smaller unit and rent the larger unit also creates that diversity of housing types at market rate. If an owner decides to build the ADU without any incentives from the city, they can charge market rate. And they will.
They can charge market rate.
But in fact, you might end up with a better mix of units if you allowed the owner to move into the smaller units and rent out. Maybe the units aren't even larger, we don't know. In some cases they probably are, in some cases they're not. Maybe you have a 2-unit that's two bedrooms, and you have an ADU that's a 2-bedroom.
It sounds like you're putting a lot of trust in that homeowner to say, oh, I mean, I don't need this much money because I'm doing it this way, so I'll be more fair. And oh no, this costs me more money.
No, we're not putting any trust. We're saying that
either scenario, it's going to be a market rate. Everyone's going to try and get as much money as they can.
So then why penalize the existing owners who would say, oh, I'm gonna go market rate on the ADU, or not even market rate. Maybe they now have to charge more than market rate because of what they had to invest to get that to happen.
They're probably not going to get it rented.
They would get it rented.
And that's market rate.
And the other goal was to increase the numbers of units available in the city.
Correct.
Not all, we understand that everything is not going to be affordable.
No, I'm not,
So-
I don't think you are understanding what I'm saying, is you would still get a unit. It would just be, well,
It would be a bigger unit.
It's
Yeah.
potentially a bigger unit.
Well,
Which
it would
goes
be a
to
bigger
what,
unit.
which
Maybe.
may be a bigger unit, which goes to what you just read, which says increasing the range and choice. So if you don't allow owners to move into the ADU, they might not build it.
Well, so Eric, your house is a really good example. You have a really big unit, you have a very small unit. Let's say you built an ADU, it would be medium size. The ordinance says you can live in the big one or the small one, but not the medium one.
Yeah,
That doesn't make sense.
that does not make sense.
Isn't the overall picture here, we're looking at Asbury Park as it exists today, and that in the R1, R2 zone, there are several dwelling units that have an accessory building on that lot. And we're saying basically we can take that accessory unit and make that a dwelling unit. And that is a homeowner decision. Let's forget about the affordability of the rental units, but aren't we here looking at a situation where we're contemplating converting existing structures to ADU? And if they fall into the affordable category, great. If they don't, that's the homeowner's decision or the property owner's decision. But what we're really trying to do here is maximize the use of those buildings as dwelling
Right.
units.
To create more housing options.
To create more housing.
To
So you
create
can
more
also build,
housing.
you can build new.
It sounds like we're all saying something similar, which is, I know the ordinance says that, one of the units has to be owner occupied, which I like. I don't understand why it matters if the primary residence is single family or 2-family, why if the owner is living in the primary residence or the ADU, I don't get why it matters. If it's R1 or if it's one family or two family.
I don't understand that either.
Well,
Why, if I own a single family home, can I build an ADU and move into the ADU? But if I own a two family home, I can't build an ADU and move into the ADU.
I think Eric's right that it brings in more different types of housing. I think when it comes to rentals like that, I think you find more people looking for a smaller rental than a bigger rental. You find less 3 and 4 bedrooms than you rental.
Yes, so then to that point,
Yeah.
why are we allowing people who own a single family home to move into their ADU and rent their primary house?
Yeah, which is larger than the ADU, but not a two-family person
We're
who.
allowing it in
It
one
does seem
situation, I feel like we should allow it in both.
That's fine. My point really was that I feel like it's going to end up with being a lot of these larger rentals that are worth a lot of money, and you aren't getting that same housing benefit you're getting. And I feel like we have to offer it in some scenarios, but if you do it in every scenario, it just gets a lot out of hand. But
I
understand both points of view.
And I think that we would be surprised actually, because when we have rented, it's been a long time since our one-bedroom apartment has come up for rent, because I am one of those homeowners who rents it well below market. And I hope she never moves out. We love you, Leilani. Can you hear me? We get inquiries from so many people looking for 2 and 3 bedrooms because they are younger families, to be honest, and they'll have the parents and 1 or 2 kids. And that is the housing type they need, is 3 bedrooms. And they're not available. They're very rare. I'm sure you know as a renter. Yeah, and you're right. It does depend on but you can't on one side say, oh, we're going to let them move out of the big one into the small one, but not these people out of the big one into the small one.
all right, so here we are. So is that the only outstanding item that we have?
I think that's the outstanding one. I think we should continue with the presentation in case there's anything else there.
Yeah.
That's
Yep.
I do have one, other question, completely unrelated, so I'm happy to move on. So what about the non-conforming use, or the business zone? What bulk standards apply to ADUs in business zones?
That's a very good question, because it is a completely non-conforming structure.
It is a conforming, 1 and 2 families are conforming in the business zone.
That's right.
So do you apply the business zone bulk standards?
No, we're going to at the line that you have to apply.
Good, yes,
The R1
I want to make sure that we buttoned this up.
The standards for the ADU, that's what applies.
We're going to apply the R1 standards
Yeah.
for the B district.
Great.
Okay.
No, good. No, I want to make sure that these things are spelled
Yes.
out, because that's what seems appropriate.
One thing I said before is clarity. Eric brought something up that I want to make sure we clarify. For the affordable housing bonuses and everything else, they're only applicable when the ADU unit, the small unit, is the one that's going to be deed restricted to be affordable housing, right? As in, an owner can't get the bonus, move into the smaller one, and then use the restriction of the larger structure.
See, I'm going to say, I believe you're correct, because it's a incentive for construction. So that it's the smaller unit typically getting constructed.
That would be the one that's getting constructed.
Yes.
That's the point of this. Yep, that has to be, that is on, just to make sure that it's in there. I mean, you can, it wouldn't have to be now, but we could just make sure that when we're making our recommendation, that's what we say. So for anyone getting any of these bonuses, it has to be for the ADU and the owner is not living in the ADU.
No. They can't.
So that could be a statement.
They have
Right.
to meet the eligibility
Yes.
income.
Absolutely.
Right. They could never, if they took the bonus, the owner could never move into.
Exactly.
Well, maybe not. Actually,
Well, that's why, we just want to make sure it's in there.
After 10 years.
Michelle, if it's not in there right now, we just make sure that it is.
is. And they're on the list.
And that's
Oh, they
fair.
couldn't, no.
This question about affordability.
We're going to make sure they can't.
If you take the money, you shouldn't be able to live in the unit.
Okay.
Question about affordability. I don't think there's anything here about counting affordable units towards the city's fair share plan, but they will be No, everything will be logged, so if at some point in the future the city wants.
Only if they accept the bonuses.
Right.
Efficiency bonuses.
Right, no, but that is the case if
Yes.
they,
Yes.
I thought there
Yes,
is
that's my-
something
that
in
makes
here,
sense.
again, not worded that way, but it would count because of the restriction. Like the
That's my
applicant,
question, I just want to make sure the city would be logging somewhere that.
the applicant is
bonuses were
required,
given and-
right, the applicant is required to contract with the municipality's affordable housing administrative agent.
Okay, so they'll be keeping track.
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure we're keeping track.
Before we leave this page, one of the items on this page here is, has no parking requirement. And I think that is something that needs to be reconsidered. In my experience in Asbury Park, with property owners who have buildings with accessory buildings, there was always 2 or 3 cars attached to the accessory building. And if you remove the parking requirement, you're just going to flood the streets with more cars to be parked. I think that requirement should not be in here.
That's only if you deed restrict it.
I understand that, but even at that, it should not be in, because people who live in the rear dwellings in Asbury Park, it's been my experience, they always have at least 1 car and sometimes more than 1. You're usually a couple of business people who live in those units. They're not typical family units. Both the people work, each has his own car, or each has her own car, and
Or a truck or a van or,
yes, or something. It's got
Something.
a vehicle,
there's a vehicle.
and you're just creating you're moving the problem from the lot to the street.
Is there any concern if we say as a recommendation, council can choose to do whatever they like?
Part of the reason for that is, especially on the west side, there are a number of homes that just don't have driveways. The only parking available is on the street.
So that's why that was put in that
That's
way.
one of the reasons why we wanted to make it possible for that single-family homeowner who does not have a driveway, but does have the space to put in an ADU to be able to do it.
This also seems consistent with what we do for the big developers.
Correct.
Yeah.
It is.
So,
So again, why would we
I-
give that bonus to developers and not to single-family homeowners?
Correct.
I would not want to take that, personally, I would not want to take that feature out.
And I think it's also typical with affordable housing generally
Yeah.
throughout the state that the parking requirement for affordable housing is generally waived. We also are a community with many transportation choices that other communities don't have. And so,
And frequently, low-income residents
yeah.
don't have access to a vehicle and they have to use public transportation.
So that's the reason.
That's not been my experience, but so be it.
But Jim, this would only be for the deed restricted affordable units,
Correct,
not for all ADUs,
Correct.
just the deed restricted affordable.
correct.
And we also want to encourage people to put in income restricted units.
This does bring up a good question though with these, so if there's a 10-year deed restriction, when 10 years is up, is there a parking requirement?
The requires only for like the actual development, when building it.
and then
There's,
it's,
you would add it on later.
Right, so 10 years from now, once you're renting this thing for market rate, you still don't need to have parking.
Right, so I want to say, originally,
If in 10
This-
years you want to do an ADU, then you have to find a place to park that car.
no, that's what they're saying is you don't.
so this is part of like the incentive with getting someone to do an affordable, that in 10 years,
You don't have to have a parking space.
you don't have to have the parking space. And yeah, there's more, yeah, it's kind of again with the incentive, because as you pointed out, Eric, the financial incentive itself is not that strong. So that we had to put in some other incentives as well.
All right, do we have any more that you're?
Oh, I was gonna say, I think that this is really my last slide.
Okay.
And then the, but James had a question he was reserving.
All right.
Oh, I thought you had one. You have more.
I have more questions, sorry. Did you want to keep going, James?
No, I don't have any more.
So in terms of the community design standards, are flat roofs permitted on ADUs?
Well,
Flat or sloped roofs?
Well, here, I'm going to tell you how we've been interpreting it with garages.
But can I
Go ahead.
just say something? That question, though I know might be relevant to you, probably is not relevant to
No, it is
this.
because it says
It's to the design standards.
it refers to the design standards.
Right.
But the reason I want to ask is because I hope that as we think about ADUs, we're looking for how the impact of that development can be minimized through sustainable strategies. And flat roofs double the amount of available area for roof solar. It's true.
All right, well, that
Yeah,
depends on
and so-
what's the design standards.
And so
What are the design standards in general for an R1? Because that's really what this is.
that's right. So the way this is written, and I read the design standards,
Okay.
it does not appear that one would be able to build a flat roof structure which would accommodate flat roof solar and other sustainable strategies under our current.
Right, but the design, I don't believe that the design requirements have anything to do with this. Meaning that if you want to change the design requirements.
No, in here it could provide an exception. It could say you may do a flat
Then
roof.
perhaps that should be a variance.
Right. I was going to say, we take into the context when someone comes to modify a structure. So the design of the structure itself should not have a visual impact on the R1 neighborhood and be something out of character to at most be able to accommodate maybe one more solar panel. We have solar applications on sloped roofs of garages, and we have pulled it off here. I mean, there's more to it. You also don't forget about the tree canopy. A lot of times the barrier to doing the solar in the rear is the tree canopy.
I think we should look at incentivizing sustainable strategies as part of the ADUs, which would include things like stormwater, low albedo materials on roofs, maximizing the available area for for rooftop solar, and then also, I agree, no balconies, but access stairs that are attached to the outsides of buildings should be okay because it means less area that's enclosed that has to be constructed and thermally cooled and heated. These are all part of a sustainable, there's
Right,
incentives.
but you're asking for design standards
No, but
to change, and that's not the intent here. If you want something different than what the current design standards are, I would think that you go in for a
I'm
variance.
suggesting that there may be another paragraph in here that looks more holistically at a range of energy efficiency incentives that might be offered. And maybe the incentive is just a slight relaxation of the lot coverage, just like there is one for what the lot coverage is relaxed.
For affordability.
No, there's another, I'm sorry, in the,
I think what you're saying is anything that can be done through this mechanism.
yeah, there is, and there was another a bonus, the accessibility bonus. You get a 5% bump in lot coverage for accessible designs. This is modifying design standards. And so I think that there should be a way that we look for opportunities to make sure that the environmental impact of these buildings is minimized to the greatest extent as well. And that could...
I understand, but all we're here for is to say, okay, here's a recommendation. Council can say yes or no.
Yeah, that's my recommendation, is that
So
we
you
should
can
really
say that you want green
overlay-
standards.
Yeah, or
Why
green
not? How does the board feel about
incentives, about saying like, let's consider green incentives
What's
for.
the consensus of the board about what Eric is saying? Let's see if we.
I can talk
Board-
to that, because I mean, I feel like in a lot of instances in my professional side of life that it is an opportunity. There's not that many opportunities that we have to emphasize green standards right now. And ADUs is one that municipalities have used around the country as an opportunity to say, when you do this, this is an opportunity to bring in these strategies.
That's two members. What about the rest?
I got a problem with the flat roof concept. It's been my experience in 70 years of construction that flat roofs tend to leak, and you get yes, you can get them such that they don't leak and you can maintain them. But if you're championing the cause of flat roofs.
No, I'm not championing the cause of flat roofs.
It's
I'm
giving
championing the cause of environmental sustainability. Nor are they flat. They are there's actually a slope requirement.
Actually, yes, almost all flat roofs have slopes, and they almost always leak. And I think you're creating a problem where none exists. And if somebody wants to change the design of a building, let them come in and argue with the construction office when they apply for a building permit.
No, but it's the opposite of sorry to interrupt, but it's the opposite of making people want to do that instead of having to fight for it.
I have a question before you finish polling. When you say incentives, what type of incentives do you mean?
Well, you just, like the example of that where it's at
And
5%.
Who's going
No.
to supply this incentives?
Not money, but the same
No, it's
thing.
not. It's not money. It says the property may exceed permitted building coverage by 5% if you design the ADU in an accessible manner. I think this is a wonderful.
But that's to accommodate wheelchair radius.
Right, and our master plan goals point to environmental sustainability in many ways. And so if you can have an ADU that is essentially off the grid, could you give somebody 5% more lot coverage?
Well, the thing is, I'm going not to interrupt your
No.
polling, but here's the thing: how many people am I going to get who are going to go off the grid because?
Or reduce the stormwater, or
Please, I think my approach
Go
is
ahead.
the logical way to approach it. We've got two members who have put.
I would like
let me
to
finish.
characterize it before you finish.
Yeah,
When you're done.
you've made your point. If you want to recharacterize, it's entirely up to you. But we have a position taken by two members on a prospective issue in the case. All I'm trying to find out is who agrees, disagrees, because ultimately it's going to be whether or not that is addressed is a vote of the members to say, yes, it should be in, or no, it shouldn't. And the majority will rule. So I'm just trying to get clarity on that. And if your point wins the day, it wins the day. I don't care which way it goes. I'm just trying to get you to where.
I'm not advocating for a specific design or approach,
I
but
know.
at some point, I think there should be a consideration within this ordinance that encourages green design. That's my point. Nothing, it's not a flat roof, it's not a solar, it's not stormwater, it's none of those things, but where is there, this is an opportunity, and I hope that we can add that opportunity in.
I just want to say one piece that I know you already got my vote, but it's nothing about mandating. It's not saying you have to do this, but it's the same thing as when you're saying the master plan is a document on the shelf. Anyway, when it's the idea of how is the city saying that it's important to take these strategies? And a lot of people say, well, it's written in a line in the master plan, but there's nothing that says to do it. This is an encouraging. It's not even. So if the city is ever going to take a leadership role of saying we want to do these things, there's often that argument. This is nothing about trying to deter affordability. The idea of affordability and sustainability, people often say that's not go hand in hand. It's that if you have an interest in doing this, you shouldn't have to fight to do it. It should be a positive thing to add, to say, okay, there's these 4 strategies that I want to do. So if I can make this building have less of an impact on the city in terms of water management and energy, which we're all going to be facing, we're already facing right now, shouldn't we encourage people to do that? We have so few mechanisms to do it right now in the city, and this is one to just say, the city thinks this is important. Not that you have to do it, but if you do, here's a benefit. That's all.
So, anyone else have an opinion?
I think that a recommendation that people should do it. I get it, that should happen. I question the increase that you get. What's the percentage or whatever? What's the incentive to do that? But yes, I mean, we all have to consider sustainability. We all have to consider green infrastructure. We all have to consider that. But I'm also torn about the fact that how long has it taken us to get here? To get here? How long have you been working on this?
3 years?
3 years to get to here. We can choose as a group to either say, you know what, a recommendation to say we want to push green and green infrastructure and sustainability into a recommendation. Council could say,
Sure, yeah, but
whatever.
we should say that.
They could say that or not. But I'm as a member of the green team, I'm saying yes. I agree.
Anyone else?
I support the idea of it in theory, in theory. I don't know that this ordinance is the right place to make those recommendations, because I feel like the purpose of this was, we're not changing the design standards of the neighborhood, but now we're saying, no, we want to change the design standards for these units.
That's not what we're saying, though.
There's no changing of design
You can't
standards.
see any change in certain structures. If you're making it environmentally energy efficient, you cannot see, you might see a flat roof. We're not saying necessarily a flat roof. To say that you're gonna meet a certain energy efficiency, you don't see one different thing from the eye looking at it.
In terms of a recommendation, would it be fair, let me throw something out there. Would it be fair to say that the board, if the board agrees, of course, the board recommends that the mayor and council consider
Incentivizing green infrastructure.
incentivizing green
infrastructure and
leave it at
sustainability.
that as part of the project?
That's all we want.
If it depends on what the board.
That I would support, that I would absolutely support.
Oh, I'm confused, but James has a question.
Yeah, we gotta hear from
Go ahead.
James.
Are there any current incentives in building zoning for British creationists? Is there anything for if I want to have a home and I want to do something to my house? Is there any incentive now?
No.
So this would be, we're recommending to add these to the ADUs, but not to the normal structures, which I find odd. And I like the idea of, I can never say no to green infrastructure. I'm not going to say no to green infrastructure. I think it's a better way to do it is to do overall instead of like have the ADU have something, but not have the house have something. And then if you take those regulations and say, let's just say for the house it's 15%, and then for the ADU it's 5%. No, based on the structure. I don't know if this is the place to do it, although I do want to do it. So that's why I'm stuck between a yes and a no at the moment.
But to say that, the one argument I have with that is, as the point was just made, it took 3 years to do this. We have so few opportunities to make the change. If we're waiting, we will have, anyway, I don't want to be dramatic, but we are not making the changes we need to make within the ordinances within the city. We know because it takes time. So we have an opportunity right now, and it is kind of a backwards approach, but it's the only opportunity we have at this moment. We can't overhaul, that would be ideal, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. And you can do a change to an ADU and not have it in the main house. That's fine. It's better than not having it in the ADU.
But
It's not the same as a full new construction in most cases.
one of the things I'm grappling with is the nexus between increasing lot coverage.
We don't even know what the right incentive is.
Right, we're not recommending.
We're not recommending
what the incentive is.
That's part of the thing.
It could be expedited permitting. It could be
But here's the thing about expedited permitting. In the state of New Jersey, there are certain things we could do to expedite, but on the zoning end, we cannot legally expedite.
Right, but Michelle, what we're saying is that we're not providing any kind of incentive. We don't know what it should be.
Right.
We're saying to consider it, the mayor and council consider it. If they consider it, they would decide what it is. It's not us deciding.
No, well, because it's open-ended like this, without regulation in form here, if you make this recommendation to council without any language, and you make this recommendation to council that you want to link incentives with sustainability. If council takes you up on your recommendation, it comes back to you, and it stalls out. So,
but why would it stall out if we have the discussion?
because we need to put actual regs in here. That's why I asked, what is our incentive? What is the incentive that we're giving for, and then about which sustainable practices is the desired? Is it solar? Is it passive house? Is it the form of heating? Is it tree coverage? Is it native vegetation? It's sustainability, as you know, is a very broad umbrella. And what is it that we here in this municipality what would are the incentives we most want, and we incentivize it. But so that's why it's a broad brush stroke that we can make a recommendation. Of course, that we want more sustainability element, but again, back to the incentive. I keep going back. What do we have to give that there's a nexus with sustainability?
It's certainly-
So there's two nexi, like that I can think of off the bat. Like, what if somebody decided to use pervious paving? Could you give them 5% more coverage if it helped them get everything in? There's a nexus. That's the relationship between lot coverage and stormwater. Energy efficiency. You're building a new unit and you're putting a new unit on the grid. If that unit has solar generation as part of it, you're reducing the off-site impact of that house.
But what's the incentive?
I don't know what the incentive in that case is, but
that's why I feel,
but I'm not.
yes.
But I'm not here to be quizzed. I tell you, there are plenty of ways that there's a nexus, right?
But to be fair, I think that we have to come up with some suggestions for the council to be able to use. We can't just say, oh, well, it has to be this.
We don't have to have that answer tonight. That's what we're supposed to. We would say, here's our recommendation. Can we Can we consider what that would be, do some research, figure out some options?
Before you write the resolution?
No.
So,
You have 35 days within which to act.
All right.
so the pragmatist in me thinks all of this is such a good idea, but I just question whether
You have a choice.
this is the right ordinance for it to come up with all these ideas, stall the whole process, and have it only apply to ADUs, versus do we make a recommendation that the council considers updating design standards to incentivize green initiatives, which would then apply to ADUs
It would apply to everything.
yeah, which is, so the upside is that it applies to everything, the city has time to think about it. The downside is, are we missing an opportunity right now, and will we wait 3 years for that ordinance?
And that puts it very succinctly. But the other thing is that if the planning board, or those who feel that way on the planning board, that these things aren't moving forward fast enough, don't make these comments, then it never moves forward.
No, we should make the comment.
So this is the place where the planning
No,
board
make the comment. I'm just
and
thinking-
the city council can do what but these are what we do professionally.
I would say yes and say, yes, I think we should make the comment, understanding it most likely won't make it into this ordinance. So we can say, we recommend this, but if not in this ordinance, we recommend a future update to the design standards to incentivize green initiatives across all residential structures. You know what I mean?
Right, and
So
then
that
that's
we
an
take our shot,
that's an
but if we miss
yeah.
our shot, recommend, here's another opportunity.
Right, because that's an initiative of the green team as well, to be able to do that for the city. So take that on and move that forward, because right now, where's it going?
I was gonna say,
You know?
between green team, between the master plan committee, is there another avenue we could take, knowing that we wanna do this, and that's something we care about? Don't we have an avenue to start this conversation and start an actual, us actually working on something to change those design standards?
Agreed, but we've been voicing that, and so this is another reason to voice.
But
Yes.
And we should definitely voice it.
Yes, I agree with you, I totally agree with that.
But again, so I'm very unclear about the planning board has been voicing it. I mean,
Well,
I think the fear among some of our planning members is that if we don't say it, it's not being heard by city council, and we have Yvonne here.
Right.
She's hearing us say it now.
right.
What we want, I think, it's putting it in writing, putting it in resolution, putting it somewhere so that city council has to read it, has to see it on record, is a better, it's like, you know, putting it in writing, saving it in your email. Like, so you have to go back and say, we said it.
Mhm.
Well, this is how important this is.
One of the other options, James, is, I believe, is another option that we have is that, yes, we put it in as a recommendation. Another option we have is that there's a formal request from the planning board. There's a memo that goes out to the mayor, council, city manager, to Michelle, that says, we strongly request that the city take on the project of changing the design standards for all residences.
But I want to say what we're talking about is not changing the community design standards. It's because I do not believe our community design standards impede green development.
Not impede, but encourage.
Right, but I think it's another.
Provide incentives, yeah.
Provide incentives.
Right, provide incentives.
Or flexibility. Like, it's not even, it's like a sloped, a pitch sloped roof of twice the size gives you twice as much solar area than a peaked roof. It's just the way it is.
We may have to use the correct language when saying design code, I'm not sure.
Right.
Maybe that's where our discussion, but I think you understand how we feel about the importance of having incentives towards it.
It's that's the thing. The key word is not changing our community design standards per se. It is talking about the linkage of incentives for green design.
That's fine. I mean, whatever the wording is, it is. That's fine.
In your recommendation, there needs to be that.
Barriers.
That's fine. We want to remove the barriers.
Removing barriers.
We want to remove the barriers.
It's not even incentivizing.
Yes, but the thing is, you all at the planning board don't get to see what goes to the zoning board.
Correct.
In terms of the violation of those design standards. And I have to say, I'm very happy that we have those strong design standards, because if we're talking about loosening what you consider an impediment with the design standards for green, that's one thing. It's another to loosen those design standards. Because if this planning board and this council made a commitment that we want to keep the look of Asbury Park, we use those design standards to keep the look of Asbury Park.
I like Barbara's idea of a letter to the city council, as long as we make sure we word it correctly as not to.
Well, we would certainly work with Michelle, and if we have to, with Chris from the zoning board, to make sure that we do it, we use the right words, because we don't want to step on their toes either, and make sure that we're working as a group, that it might even be a memo that comes from both of us, as a zoning board and a planning board, to go to there to make it a more formal ask, as opposed to just we're concerned.
I would like to make it a yes and again. I do think we should recommend it in our comments about
We
this
do.
ordinance. Understanding the city council wants to get this over the finish line and
Yes.
may or may not act on that. And then I think the memo is a great, actual concrete
We'll just
step.
get a couple of people together to kind of put it together, review it a couple of times and figure out what the right words are, and make it a more formal request. Because we don't make that many formal requests of the mayor and council that are directly from us, that say, hey, we need to, or we would like you to. So if that's agreeable with people, and we will actually put it in as a request, if that's okay, if everybody agrees with that, we put that in a request for a recommendation anyway. And then on top of that, we take it as a separate to-do for the greater good. Is anyone opposed to that? Okay.
What would you like me to say in terms of?
The recommendation that
The recommendation specific to what we're doing here. The other is a separate issue.
That's a whole separate issue, that does not go on.
For the purposes of this review.
Correct.
And the recommendation of this review, Eric characterized it nicely, but I don't remember because I've heard so many other comments. I lost it, and I wasn't writing when you were speaking, I was listening.
I wrote down.
Okay,
I'll tell you.
maybe Michael has.
You recommended removing barriers and providing zoning incentives for green infrastructure initiatives.
In terms of these accessory dwelling units? Do you want it to be that specific? Or do you want something more of a policy? You tell me. I'm gonna write what you want me to write.
You said it before.
I can't remember what I said, which I think was to the effect of, we recommend considering the inclusion of language that removes barriers to and incentivizes green strategies, or green infrastructure and strategies for ADUs. That's all. And I don't want to be specific about what they are.
No.
Well, that specificity will come more in the memos.
Yeah.
So removing barriers and implementing green.
And incentivizing
Incentivizing green strategy.
Infrastructure.
green infrastructure strategies.
Okay.
Are we in a position to make any other statements that we would like to include? Oh, I have to more formally say things, but go ahead. All right, does anybody else have anything else that they would like to question?
While we're talking about design, the only thing I brought up before, and I don't know if we ever actually discussed it, was, I know the ADU has to follow the design standards, but are there any requirements for the ADU and the primary house to have any, I don't know how to say it, like
Consistency?
aesthetic consistency?
Nexus.
Wait, you mean with the two units?
Yes.
Yeah, the primary house and the ADU.
Yes.
My primary house be postmodern and my ADU be Victorian.
Per our current design standards, no.
Okay, well, there you go.
No
But
what? No,
you
don't
can't
have to
have-
have it,
no,
they
you-
have to be consistent.
They have to be consistent because they have
I
to.
wasn't understanding.
But I mean, I'm going to say it again. In our office, or we make regulations for the regular, not for the exception. If there is an exception and there is a good reason for that exception, there is a process for variance, and it's called a variance. Again, we fight daily in our office to make sure the housing stock for Asbury Park stays, we don't lose more than what we've lost. And our community design standards, which this board has adopted as design standards, help us do that. So I just want to say that again, because there's a lot of types of applications we get in our office, whether it's for the zoning permit process or the zoning board, that this board doesn't see.
But this goes back to the costs associated with developing an ADU.
No, but this
One
is,
of the most direct ways of building an ADU is buying, and you're probably gonna freak out when I say this word, something that's prefabricated or a kind of a floor plan that's been developed, and you can buy the components and they'll build it for you, and it would comply with all of the bulk standards and requirements, peaked roofs, whatever. But if you're driving up the cost that it has to match the house in detailing, fenestration,
that's not what we
how
said.
far is it going?
I don't think that's
Marie,
what the intent
go to my
is.
slide with the different, no, you don't have to put gingerbread trim on your garage, but you have to have good design context. And I think, except maybe that one, all these ADUs here have good design context. Clearly that green one is a prefab structure. Does that fit in with most of the homes in Asbury Park? Yes.
You just put the coloring and.
Right, but what I'm
Red.
saying is if someone decides to do something that is not compatible with the neighborhood, that we want the ability to, and this is again, something this planning board wants as well, to include, to be able to regulate aesthetics to a certain degree. No, so we don't dictate currently your garage has to look like this and this and this, but if we see something that's way out of context and visible from the street and from others, like the same way we regulate some of the appendages on buildings so that it's aesthetically pleasing, that we continue to do.
Okay. All right. Anything else that anyone has? Okay. Open to the public. Okay. Motion to close.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Any other comments from our? Or actually, we have to get all of our requests down before we ask for any comments from the board.
Since I wrote this comment down, we found some further bulk requirements and so on. So I had put in here a comment that said, make sure bulk requirements are restrictive. They're already there. You
Yes.
already pointed them out.
They're already there.
So I can take them out. One point that was brought up, that the bonuses are to be used towards the construction of the ADU versus using the bonuses moving into the ADU.
The owners cannot, the property owners cannot accept a bonus, because then they would have to meet the income standards. And
The most recent one is recommend considering removing barriers and implementing green infrastructure strategies. We want to gingerly approach the term of rentals, but not be too specific, so that we don't, is that correct?
well, that was the whole thing about it not being a monthly rental.
Right,
So we don't want to turn this into a monthly rental.
Seasonal rentals.
Right.
And I know Michael brought out a point about, it's inconsistent to say, and Eric was mirroring his point, that if you, doesn't matter, you have a big house here, where, the logic wasn't there to say, why can't you move into the accessory dwelling unit, whether it's 1 unit or 2 units in the main house? It's still the same thing, because you're not accomplishing anything by doing that, by distinguishing between the two.
Wait, so just on that point, so we're recommending that 1 unit on the property must be owner occupied, but it doesn't matter if it's primary or ADU, whether it's single family or two family. Is that?
That's our recommendation.
Is that what people?
That is-
Our conversation?
I'm not thrilled with it.
What?
I'm not thrilled with it, but yes. Yes, because there's only so much you can control. There's only so much you can control that makes sense, because we are trying to provide a variety of different types of dwelling units.
So is the change that we're recommending taking out that 2-family piece?
There isn't, I don't think there is no piece.
Current language.
There is no
Okay.
No,
current.
it's wrapped up in that 2-family piece, but so stated as you,
That's the request, is to
Yeah.
say that.
1 unit must be occupied
By an owner.
It doesn't matter whether it's within a 1 or 2
The primary
family unit
structure or the accessory
in
structure.
the ACU.
80.
80, I'm sorry.
It's like the American Collegian.
The other one I have that Michelle said she was going to look anyway, is it just to specify that the ADU needs to be behind the primary unit? I don't know if behind is the right word.
right, I will tweak that to a better word.
Yeah, just to make
Yeah.
sure that it is, that is in the back, like we say back lot, but it's not on the side. And the only time that would really be an issue is more new construction. That you don't want it to be side by side, it can't be in the front.
Those garages are on the side.
Or if it's a double lot, some places, some people, their backyard is really the side yard, but this was a good point. And we'll
Right.
find a better word besides behind.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Is there anything else that
Yeah, wait.
we have?
Within the rear yard might be the way to,
Within the rear yard? Or if
It
it's a
must be
side
within
yard?
the rear
because
yard.
the rear yard is always behind the building line.
All right, say that. We're going, tell me when you're ready, Jack.
Got it.
We're going to apply the R1 standards to the B District 1 and 2 families.
Okay.
Would you not apply the R2 standards? Because that's closer to the B zone's natural standards?
No, because I don't believe so. The B standards, you're allowed almost 90% coverage.
Right, but applying the bulk standards of R1, if we're thinking about it as a gradient, R1, R2, R3, B.
I mean, I need to pull up now the B2 standards to take a look, because I'm not the B2, the R2, because I'll be honest, I don't have them per memory like I do the R1, because our B2 district, we are so small,
And I actually didn't, I just wanted to know which standards apply, and the point being that we should specify which standards
Well, I
apply.
was
Right, we
going,
were looking at R1 was
Yeah.
the standard.
But I
R1 is the
think
standard.
applying the R1 standard to the B zone is equivalent to a down zoning.
No, for the
Where in
bulk.
an R2 or an R3, which is closer to the bulk standards of the B zone. would
No.
be
You're already
lower.
non-conforming with everything.
No, they're conforming. 1 and 2 families in the business zone are conforming. They are conforming.
because I don't know if I have time to give like the reason why they're basically abut the B zone. If the B zone was ever going to expand, or we even have a case where some businesses have like outbuildings, and it's a story that about our past history, why you have one families in the B.
If two-family homes are permitted in the B zone already, then it should be whichever is more generous, right?
Yeah, but I want to look
Standard.
before because we need to be specific and decide now rather than leave it that loose. So I need the chart.
Yeah, and the thing is
Okay.
that the B zone.
All right, let Michelle look without any
Marie, or you can.
chatter.
Because it's easier for me to do it on the computer as well. Not with a little screen.
For the R2, it's
Hang on, Michelle's looking at it.
30% and 65%, the same as the
So
R1.
it's the same as the R1.
For the R3, it's 30 and 65. For the business, it's 80%.
So we can say R1 or R2.
I would put R2
Why?
because it allows a smaller lot size. The minimum lot size in R2 is 2,500 square feet. The
I think-
minimum lot size in R1 is 5,000.
I think it should be the R1.
All right, R1 it is.
What?
R1.
Great.
Consensus of the board? Okay.
Wait, let me just make sure we hit all my notes that I took down for this. That's my one note. Okay. Okay. We got everything. I have mine.
Need a motion?
Okay. Got a motion to approve.
Do you have comments?
Sorry?
Can we just do your comments from the board? I just want.
Comments from the board?
My only comment is, I think this ordinance is fantastic. I just wanted to thank the council and
Yeah.
Michelle for working so hard to put this together, because I think it's actually going to make a substantial impact on the housing stock in the community, so thank you.
Thank you.
I second that. Thank you, Michelle, for all of the hard work. I know that, we we drag you through it when you're here, but we do appreciate the work.
But it hasn't been an easy road in these last 3 years. I'm glad that it finally made it to this point. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for your very insightful comments, too.
Okay, can I get a motion to approve? Based on
Yeah,
everything?
With consistency with the master plan, and these are our recommendations.
I approve. Motion to approve. I'm motioning.
Second. Okay, roll call.
Wait for Marie. When we had that presentation, Marie lost her ability to use her computer. So
All right, I'm just gonna do a quick, James Bonanno?
Yes.
Hold on a second. Apologies, I'm on the wrong page, so hold on a second. Okay, James Bonanno is a yes. Councilwoman Clayton?
Yes.
Eric Galpo?
Yes.
Jim Henry?
Yes.
Jen Souter?
Yes.
Vice Chair Goonan?
Yes.
Chairwoman Kurzak?
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Out.
Thank you, everybody, for all your input.